Hi, John,
Hey, Dave.
and welcome everybody. This is our podcast that we call Coffee and Capes. Let's start with the coffee part.
Yeah.
I feel like at some point we should develop a routine. Maybe we should develop a routine at the beginning here. Like, I think all the podcasts that I listen to regularly have a pretty set opening routine thing. And I thought maybe we should do that, but then I thought that's really kind of not us to have a set opening routine thing. So
No, I mean our opening routine is we talk about our coffee that we're drinking.
yeah, okay. Well, what are you drinking today, John?
I am drinking. It's called the Kensington Blend from Reanimator. I got it through Trade Coffee, which is a coffee subscription service online. You can find them at drinktrade.com. They do small batch roasters from all over the United States. So the nice thing is that you're supporting small businesses with this as well. And they send a new like coffee every month. So this one's really nice. It's a medium dark. It's got some really nice like chocolate and toffee flavors to it. It's very tasty. I'm really enjoying this one. And I'm enjoying it as we can see from my background, we're in very much the Star Wars kind of mood. Yeah. Started watching Rogue One again this week while Rachel's out of town to just kind of keep myself busy. And really, it's hard because you just want to skip to the end of that one.
Yes.
To watch Darth Vader be Darth Vader. But anyway, what are you drinking this morning, Dave?
I've got I got one of the regular porcelain mug cup today, old school, in honor of of our diner beginnings. One of these days we'll have to do an origin story as an episode, like how this whole thing got started for us. But I have Mother Earth coffee, and I got a lovely organic medium roast.
Where'd you get Mother Earth coffee?
I got that actually at Costco. But it too is it's obviously organic, direct trade with their farmers.
Nice.
Like small batch roasters, so it's coffee, a cup of coffee you can feel good about, which is important to me. Like, I first read about sustainable practices with coffee like in the late 90s, and have been trying to do the organic fair trade thing with coffee ever since, because daggone it, I drink a lot of coffee.
Yeah, and it's nice to be able to support small businesses. Right. So,
so it's
I don't think.
Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, we're supporting the obviously geek culture, which is no longer, I would consider, small business by any stretch of the imagination. But that's okay. That's okay, right? You don't have to be a warrior for all small businesses. You can enjoy your life the way you want to enjoy it.
Correct. That's one of the things geek culture teaches us, isn't it? That there's a role for every single type of person to play.
Diversity.
Yes.
Diversity and inclusion. If you really pay attention to geek culture, you understand it is about diversity and inclusion.
And that you too have a home here.
Yes.
Whoever you are.
Yes. Yeah.
However, not every person can play every part, and that's what we're going to talk about today. How's that for a segue?
That was a great segue.
I am a professional of the cheesy segue.
I just play one on the podcast.
Right. So we want to talk today about actors that truly embody their characters. So I don't know if we decided what we're going to name this. Is it? I had a couple ideas. It could be.
I thought "Who's Got the Look" it just really nailed it, because it immediately also made me think of that old song, like
right.
"Who's Got the Look."
Right. Yeah. I mean, and look, as my congregation knows, I'm all about the 30 or 40-year-old pop cultural references. Like, it's required.
Yeah. So I think the "Who's Got the Look" is a solid name for the podcast, and I'm excited for this one. And we were just debating kind of who gets included and why, and I'm excited to see how this one rolls out, because it's a topic we've talked about before.
It is. So I thought, how should we start at the sort of at the top, as it were? Like, are there any no doubters? Who's for you? Who are the like? Who are the men or women that just are no doubt, hands down, absolutely nailed it?
So I think that one of the things we want to talk about with this is kind of where we've also like the categories that we've put these guys into in previous conversations, right? There's the people that kind of nailed it right out of the gate, right? Just really like nailed it and owned it right out of the gate. The people that grew into it, right? That became, and you really saw them like become the embodiment of that character. And I think, you know, there's a few of those examples kind of across the board. You know, for me, I think somebody that really nailed it and was taken from us like way too soon. Heath Ledger as the Joker.
Oh my gosh. I mean, to me, that's number one with a bullet, as they say.
Yeah.
Absolutely. First name that comes to mind.
Just brilliant. Like at no point in his portrayal as the Joker did he go into what I would consider like a straight character, like a very like linear process.
Yeah.
He left and right, like upside down, all over the map, and his personality. There's two scenes that really nailed it for me in just being like, this guy is perfect. One where he first approaches all of the like mob heads and does the magic trick.
Yes.
We all know, right?
Oh my gosh. I will never forget. I mean, I won't go into the boring story about why I was in the theater that day that I was, but I was in with maybe 6 or 8 other people as a group. And at least a few of us were pretty dedicated geek culture people. And that moment when he makes the pencil disappear, I distinctly remember my eyes got huge. I remember looking at the couple of guys that were with me that were both like really into it, and you just knew in that moment that this character was gonna, this portrayal was gonna be something different, something we've never seen, and go in a way that we had no idea we were gonna, how lucky we were gonna be, and just how good it was gonna be. Like, but that moment signaled that something different was coming here, and it's gonna be glorious.
Yeah, I agree that was that moment in the movie theater for me as well. Just watching that, and then he makes the pencil disappear, and just that shock of, wow, I can't believe this movie went there, right? You like, you wanted it. You'd been asking for it from kind of that specific character too for a long time. Just that very random, and not to take away from Jack Nicholson's portrayal as the Joker, he did a really nice job. But Heath Ledger was so random. And there were, if you ever read about it, there were some like almost unscripted moments that took place in that movie. I believe, and this leads to the second moment that I thought, he's just brilliant. I read an article once a long time ago, or maybe I dreamed I read this article. I don't know. If somebody goes out and finds I'm wrong, good on you. The hospital scene where he's walking away from the hospital and he presses the button to blow it up and it doesn't blow up, and he hits it a few times, and then everything explodes and it like catches him off guard, and he just keeps and he starts cruising again. I read an article that said that was an unscripted moment, that he pressed the button and the pyrotechnics didn't line up with when he pressed the button, and so he was genuinely hitting it because he thought, you know, something was wrong, and then when it blew up, it caught him off guard, but he just rolled with it. And that like reaction, and just how like he just paused, starts hitting the thing, and then all of a sudden it explodes, and he's like, oh, and off he goes. I was like, so good.
I remember reading that too. I don't know if it's the same article, but I have read that as well. That was an unscripted moment, and that was so good. I mean, almost every scene he's in is terrific. I guess what comes to me is the that he really embodied the chaos
Yeah.
of the character. And he just does not give a bleep about anybody or anything.
Mm-mm.
And so the scene for me with that, the other one, after the pencil scene, would be, well, everything about where after they've crashed the truck and Batman's crashed his Batcycle, and first he's just the come on, come on, come on. And I know that in some ways, my memory of that scene is mingled in with the how it should have ended version, which is really pretty funny. So I think sometimes like my memory melds those, and I might kind of screw that up. But he's the come on, and then when Batman's down on the cycle and the henchman goes over to take the mask off and he gets zapped by it, and Joker thinks it's hilarious and mocks him for it, like mocks his own henchman. Like that was another moment to me that just said, "Oh, this guy just
That's
does
a
not care and
really
really
that's a really
embodies
good
the
one.
story of the just wants to watch the world burn."
And I think what you said something that really kind of brought to light the difference between Nicholson's portrayal of the Joker, and Nicholson is an amazing actor. I love Jack Nicholson, and he can do chaos really well. If you ever watched The Shining, he's terrifying.
Mhm.
But Heath Ledger's version, Nicholson's felt like he was putting effort into that character, right? That he was trying to bring the Joker to life. Ledger felt like he just did it.
Yeah.
Like it was a natural thing that was happening, and it didn't feel like scripted in the way that Nicholson's Joker felt scripted.
Yeah.
And what you're talking about there is like it's just dead on, right? Yeah. And his laugh is so good because it's just that like ha 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 he ho 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 ho, and then but it's not like chaotic, crazy, anything, but it's creepy.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
There's something mentally wrong with this person.
Right. A word that I'll admit I made some notes about this because I'm that guy. But the word that came to mind was for this portrayal was unassailable. We thought we had a little insight into the what motivates this character, but then it turns out we really, really don't.
Yeah.
And I think that's part of what makes him so terrifying and so creepy.
The perfect line from Alfred in that movie: some people just want to watch the world burn.
Right.
And that's dead on about the Joker.
Yeah.
Right. There's no motivation. It's why in the comics, like nobody, all the other high level guys, when they made the Legion of Doom, they didn't want to bring him in. He's too unpredictable. He doesn't have a motivator that you can manipulate and hone and target. He's just as likely to blow up the room of people that he's aligned with, as he is to go after, anybody else. He's just that because it's no rhyme or reason, just where he's at.
You got a gigantic pile of money? Let's burn it up.
Yeah, we'll set it on fire. That was so the right thing to see. If he would have like taken it all to build some kind of empire, we've just been like, nope.
Yeah.
Nope. That's not him. That's not it. That's not it. All right. So we've spent a little bit of time on Heath Ledger's portrayal of the Joker. Who'd you have on your list next?
Well, I mean, I had him for sure. I think I'll admit this one's a little obvious, but we got to say it, like Robert Downey Jr. as man. I mean, it's been
from the jump.
Yeah, and it's been written about a ton, so I don't think we need to spend as much time with it maybe. But just the way that the Robert Downey Jr., the person, the way his personal story mirrors in a lot of ways the Tony Stark story, right? As guys that had success early, probably were called genius, has some substance abuse issues, I mean, it's not for me to say if they hit rock bottom, but hit a hit
They're
a
fine.
really low point,
Yeah.
so low that it affected their career, and then have this resurgence, rebirth, comeback, if you will. And I have no idea if how much of his own story went into Robert Downey Jr. in playing that character, but from the outside looking in, it sure feels like it did. And
Yeah.
I think he really seems to get the combo of immense ego, immense talent, and desire to protect others in that.
Yeah. Yeah. And fear of failure.
Yeah. Oh, good. Yeah. Yeah.
Right. There was definitely throughout so much of his portrayal of Tony Stark, immense fear of failure,
Yeah.
letting everybody down, not being able to protect everyone. Right. That led to him building Ultron.
Right.
You know, and a number of other things that he did. But I would agree, there was never a moment where you didn't watch him on screen and think that is 100% Tony Stark.
Right.
That is 100% Iron Man.
Yeah.
That is everything I can remember of him in the comics.
Yeah.
It's just so on point.
And the snarky humor, like just
Yeah,
that part,
so good.
like, right.
Yeah. Yeah. You have to love, you know, all the way through. And I think it made his final sacrifice just even more heart-wrenching, right? Because we watched him through like a decade, more than a decade, own this character, develop it, hone it, you know, portray it in the exact way that you would want to see. And it was just phenomenal. Just absolutely phenomenal. Right? That was a good one.
Yeah. Do you want to? This is the kind of thing we could probably talk about beforehand, but embrace the chaos. Do you want to like give away all of our like perfect portrayals, or you want to go on to like some of the other categories of people that have grown into it or missed it, and then come back to some more? Or
I think we can intermingle it. I do want to bring up, because we talked about this at the beginning, the voice actor piece, right? And we talked about this one specifically, and I have to bring it up. I don't think you have Darth Vader without James Earl Jones's voice. And while he wasn't the physical actor behind the portrayal of Darth Vader, it's not the same without him. His voice was brilliant.
Yes. Yeah. I don't think it's an iconic character for 45 years or whatever we're at this point without that voice.
Yeah. And so much so that despite all the casting, you know, differences throughout all the different Star Wars movies, he came back. They had to bring him back to voice Darth Vader every single time.
Right.
Every single time. There was no question. You couldn't substitute somebody else. It was just him every time. Yeah. So and we'll kind of circle back around, I think, to this topic maybe a little bit later, because we had a couple others in there. But yeah, James Earl Jones was Darth Vader to me.
100%. I've got the on that topic, if we stay there for a second, I've got the DC animated characters background going there, and I gotta nominate the voice of the 90s animated Batman. Is it Kevin Conroy or Conroy? It was Conroy, isn't it? Like somehow, like that's the voice that does it for me. And like the current DC movies have largely been good, and there've been a few different people. Bruce Greenwood, I think, is a guy that does some of the Batman, and he's perfectly fine. And I don't mean that as an insult. Like he's fine. Like
right.
He's pretty good. Like the Tracy Morgan commercials. I'm pretty sure he's okay. No, like he's good, but I don't know. Maybe it's because I was a young adult when the animated cartoon thing came out. But animated cartoon, is that redundant? when the animated series came out. Like, I think he just gets the voice right.
Agreed. Yeah, I would agree with that. I would agree with it. So how about moving into actors that grew into their characters and became like the embodiment of it? Who do you have?
That's a good question. How about Chris Hemsworth as Thor for that?
I would agree with that. Yeah.
My question though, I don't know how much of that is on the actor and how much of it is the writing.
Mm-hmm.
That, you know, the character for the first couple of movies, for Thor, for the first Avengers movie, into even Thor Dark World, is pretty stilted and wooden and kind of there's not a lot of personality there, right?
Yeah, I think we saw flashes in the first Avengers movie when they because Hemsworth is funny.
Right.
Hemsworth has just an amazing sense of comedic timing. And if somebody's sitting here listening to this or watching this and they're like, Thor has good comedic timing, you have not seen Ragnarok, right? And B, you haven't watched the all women's version of Ghostbusters, which is a highly underrated movie. But Chris Hemsworth in that is hilarious alongside like Melissa McCarthy and the rest of that cast. So in the first Avengers movie where he's kind of standing on the bridge and they're having the conversation about Loki, and they're like, he killed X number of people, and he's like, he's adopted?
Right.
And you're like,
hey, careful, that's my brother. He
Yeah.
killed however many people.
Yeah.
Adopted. Yeah.
Yeah, he's adopted.
Yeah.
Right. You know, and his voice inflections, I feel like the first movie, right? The first Thor movie was directed by Kenneth Branagh.
Yeah.
Right. And Kenneth Branagh is incredible. He comes from a traditional like Shakespearean background in terms of acting. And I think there was an effort in the first Thor movie, to your point, to make it feel very kind of like Shakespearean almost in its entirety, right?
Yeah.
We got little things, but it wasn't like an outside reach of what you might think a Viking Asgardian would do, like throwing the cup on the ground. I like this
story of the royal court, and
right. And then in Dark World, you know, in Dark World, I enjoyed Dark World. I didn't dislike Dark World, but you know, I think most of us agree that Marvel kind of had a sophomore jinx for a little while. Like Iron Man 2, not great. Thor Dark World, entertaining, but not the best.
Right.
You know, and I would agree with you. I think a lot of that has to do with like writing, but to the credit of the people making the movies, they finally realized Hemsworth's skills within that comedic timing aspect, and started to bring that to light and to life a little bit more. You know, and also I think we got to see, you know, Thor's like true power, and Hemsworth, he does a really nice job, and he grew to do a really nice job once they took him out of his box and said, oh, you can do regal, strong, powerful, and humble, funny, hurt. Let's let you do that then.
And in a kind of odd meta sort of way, I would say that really does pretty perfectly embody the larger narrative in the Thor comic books. You know what I mean? That like early on in like the 60s and in the 70s and even into the 80s, Thor's pretty wooden and stilted, and his dialogue's pretty rough to go back and read. Like it's not great. But as the story continues, like through the whole thing where there's like all the Norse gods are dead for a while, and then he brings them back, and Asgard moves to Oklahoma,
That's such a good one.
right? And as you move into Siege and Fear itself, and then eventually, as I've talked about before, and probably will again, the Jason Aaron run on Thor,
Yep.
that concluded just spectacularly, in my opinion, in War of the Realms. Like the character goes through this whole transformation. It's similar to what we've been talking about with what the Hemsworth version has gone through on screen. That by the time you get to Endgame, he's funny, like you just said, he's funny, really powerful. At times, like, is convinced he's the most powerful, and because of that, like, he has the most responsibility. Not to steal a Spider-Man line, but like,
Right.
and yet the pathos is strong with this one as well. He's motivated in a lot of ways by the pain he's experienced.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely. And just, I think that growth too came out. I think certain characters have perfect foils that you put against them that make them more engaging, more real, more whatever you want to say. And Tom Hiddleston's Loki was picture perfect in that regard. And I liked Hiddleston's Loki. Again, we saw him really come out a couple times, but again, I think, he was a little stilted like Hemsworth was. But as time went on, he became like funny as well. And those two with each other, some heart-wrenching, like tear-jerking moments, some hilarious moments, and then moments where you're like, they're gonna kill each other. Right?
Yeah.
And through it all, we saw them grow into brothers. We saw that brotherly love. We saw it truly exist in a way that didn't like maybe exist in the first Thor movie, right? We saw Hemsworth's mourning when he thought Loki died. We saw Loki's sadness when he thought Thor was gone. Like it's just really, really well done job by the writing staff to recognize the potential depth and breadth that these characters could have, and the ability and skill of the two individuals involved to bring those characters to a new level. And they really did. I mean, man.
Yeah, for sure.
So good. And Fat Thor. Awesome.
And it's funny, but I feel like that's a thing that could have just been like, oh, we're just going to use this as a gag, and isn't it funny and clever? But I think it really fits with it was a great way to, again, embody the grief that he was experiencing, that Thor was, the character.
Yep.
That he just couldn't, he couldn't stand to care anymore, and he had to just sort of let it go. Well, because he cared so much, because he was so hurt by not being able to save everybody, by not going for the head or whatever. Like, he's devastated.
Yeah.
That Thor thing is both funny and tragic.
Yep. I agree. All right. So one of mine that grew into this.
Yeah.
Same cinematic universe, and same first name, Chris Evans.
Okay.
Chris Evans, Captain America: First Avenger. Again, I think we chalk a lot of that up to maybe and high expectations set from the first Iron Man. Yeah. Right? High expectations set from the first Iron Man. And that kind of maybe first round of how do we really, like, what is this character about? How do we really talk about it? And now I want to say, like, Evans did a nice job in Captain America: First Avenger. But through the first movie, I wasn't 100% convinced, because Cap in the comic books has a presence. like just a presence about him. And I didn't get that in the first Avenger, right?
Yeah.
However, it started to show up despite the terrible costume in the first Avengers movie.
Yeah.
Shame on you, costume designers from the first Avengers
At least
movie.
they laughed at themselves about it, though.
They really did. It was lovely. I loved it. All right. That was great. Who's in the spangly suit? But when we got to Captain America, like Winter Soldier, oh, hands down. And ever since, everything that he did, every way that he acted, everything that he said, every motivating factor that he displayed, hands down, Captain America.
Yeah.
Just absolutely hands down, Captain America, Steve Rogers, right?
Yes.
And I think that's important because we have a new Captain America, and I'm super excited to see Anthony Mackie play Captain America. I mean, we've talked about this before. He just really does a nice job, and somebody else I think grew into their character, hands down. But yeah, for me, Evans will always be. You couldn't recast Steve Rogers.
Agreed. Yeah.
I just can't see it now. I could have seen it after the first one, right? And you're like, okay, well, if you found somebody else, right? And some of that may be, I'm gonna say, my own bias and residual like feelings, because we'd seen Evans play a Marvel Cinematic Hero before in Johnny Storm, and so maybe there was some of that leftover carryover, right?
But I think that's a good example of just what we're saying, that Evans was able to grow into Cap. He wasn't a good fit as Johnny Storm. He became a really good, and maybe he's a good enough actor. He could have grown into that character if that whole piece wasn't just so, all those movies weren't just so terrible. But the Chris Evans as Steve Rogers, Captain America, as you say, he had the chance to grow into it, and he really, really did. And so that it feels like, at least to us as outside observers, a much better mesh of actor and character than Evans and
I would agree.
Evans has just what you're saying, the presence, right? That moral
language,
earnest, yeah. But he manages to do it in a way that's endearing and not super annoying somehow.
And to go to the, you had Hiddleston and Helmsworth, when they finally brought Iron Man and Captain America together, and that relationship developed over time, it was amazing.
Yeah.
It was dead on too. Like those two, the way that they interacted, you could see the moments of I'm gonna strangle you, and the moments of, like just that like camaraderie love.
Yeah.
Camaraderie, is that a word? You know what? We're good with it. In the softness, in the mild humor that existed, like in Civil War, when Evans says, when I see something going south, I just gotta, attack it, and Downey Jr. is like, sometimes I just want to punch you in your perfect teeth, right? That was one of those moments. You're like, yeah, this is them, like to a T, like brothers in arms, very divergent views coming from different eras, like different backgrounds, but probably want to kill each other at some point. They try at the end of Civil War, and then it goes on. So that, that's another thing.
Yeah.
Do we have anybody in the DC world that you think grew into a character?
That's a good question. Again, sometimes it's hard to separate from the writing. I'd almost say Gal Gadot has sort of grown lesser in Wonder Woman. Is that harsh? Is that fair? Like I thought her first appearance as Diana Prince in the Batman v Superman was really good, and her standalone movie was so good. And then we all know Justice League was just a mess. The Snyder Cut is better. Honestly, I don't remember much about her performance in there because it's not really focused on her. And Wonder Woman 2 was just such a mess. That I don't know how, I don't know if that's fair to her. Is that not being fair? Maybe I'm not being fair to her to say she's not embodying character when the quality of the writing in the movies hasn't been anywhere near good enough.
Yeah, I thought she was a phenomenal Wonder Woman in, Batman versus Superman. I thought she was amazing in the first Wonder Woman. I mean, what an incredible job. Well written and directed movie. The Snyder cut, I never talk about the first one, the first version of that anymore. It doesn't exist. It's dead to me.
Right.
But in the Snyder cut, she was, again, really nice presence, very strong, very confident, all those things. And then Wonder Woman 84, I was just disappointed. I felt like we got another messy like DC movie that just missed the mark on a number of points. So I don't know that it's fair on, to say Gal Gadot went backwards, because I think it was the writing that went backwards. And I think if, somebody came back around that knew and understood the character really, really well, I think we would get a strong performance from Gal Gadot.
That's fair. And I think now that you're saying that, thinking about the Snyder Cut again, the scene in the bank really, to me, embodies the Wonder Woman character. Here's her strength and her speed and her precision and her absolute determination to take you down, and then also protect the kids and connect with them afterwards. Like that moment where what does she give I forget exactly what she does. So she does something like with the little girl in the bank and make sure she's okay, and like the instant transformation from almost invincible warrior to
soft,
compassionate, like is able to be the presence that the kids need in that moment is terrific.
I agree. I would say, and so I'd like to transition into, I mean, we talked about like the swing and the miss one, and maybe we save that for a second. I want to talk about undercredited for their performance in their role for whatever reason. Maybe the movie just wasn't a box office success or what have you. Or in geek world, you can burn me at the stake for this if you want, or it was just a bunch of people from our culture who wanted what they wanted and got something that they weren't expecting, and so they just panned it terribly, or really didn't understand the history and how the character was developed and came from. And I'm going to start with one that is probably going to be controversial, but I liked Ryan Reynolds as Green Lantern.
What? You're not allowed to say that out loud.
I know, right? It's probably going to get me booted. We'll never get another listener again.
Right, exactly.
And I think that this was more of a movie that tried to do too much in its 2-hour window and gave us the wrong intro into that universe. Like, had they I think everybody expected Green Lantern and Sinestro, right, to square off. And what we got was a very long, convoluted, kind of messy thing. And the thing that I heard people say against Reynolds' portrayal of Hal Jordan was that Hal Jordan wasn't, this fly boy, like, kind of sarcastic, whatever. I will 100% disagree with that. I grew up a huge Green Lantern fan. Huge. It was my favorite in the DC universe for a long time. I read tons of comics around him. I watched every like thing that I could. He was a cocky pilot who didn't lose that edge until he had been a Lantern for a long time and gone through a whole lot of like rough stuff, and was possessed by parallax at one point and all these other things. Like, he didn't become that version of Green Lantern forever. He was cocky pilot, flyboy, right? Kind of a cowboy, and the animated DC movies portrayed that as well.
Yeah.
And so I was really bummed out when like DC fandom like just hammered him for that, because one, I don't think the movie was his fault, and I think his portrayal of Hal Jordan was actually fairly on point.
Yeah, I can't really disagree with that. I mean, I think if you made me choose, though, I would say he's much better as Deadpool.
Oh yeah, for sure.
I mean, he definitely embodies Deadpool.
Yeah.
Like,
yeah.
I mean,
He is Deadpool like perfectly.
Yeah.
He was the bright spot in Origins.
Yeah, someday we're gonna do a podcast on like movies that are better than you've been led to believe they are. Origins will not make my list on that.
It doesn't exist. We don't talk about it.
No. The Merc with a Mouth who didn't have a mouth.
Yeah, so weird. And the sliding swords out of the arms, like Wolverine claws.
Just stop.
You just not stop. Okay, guys. Like, sincerely not okay. But thank God Ryan Reynolds and Rob Liefeld didn't let that be the end. We have and just real quick trip back to the like somebody that embodied the character right from the jump. Ryan Reynolds as Deadpool. Nobody can disagree with that.
100%.
Yeah. So
funny and sarcastic and
so good.
And silly and sophomoric and
yes. Yeah.
And still badass, but like every bit of it.
Dude, the superhero landing part is like so bad on the knees. The breaking the fourth wall to have like conversations with the audience, everything just so well done. I know some people didn't like Deadpool 2 as much as Deadpool 1, and that's okay. But where he's standing there squaring off against Juggernaut for the first time, and he's like just swinging back and forth in that like super excited to meet you kind of little kid way, and then he gets ripped in half, and he's like, oh God, where are my legs? Just thank you.
The PG-13 version of Deadpool 2 was better, but that's a conversation for another day, I think.
Yeah. It's so good.
Yeah.
So good.
Let's go back. How about other? Because I got a couple others like no doubters.
Okay, let's hear them.
All right. I gotta say Chadwick Boseman as T'Challa, Black Panther.
Yeah.
And it's obviously it's tragic that he died.
Yeah.
Last year, and we don't get to see that anymore. So to me, he's like Heath Ledger in that way that at least we got a couple of performances from him.
Yeah.
And we've been getting a couple of more in the What If, which has been cool, and we'll maybe next week when after the What If finale comes out, we might have to talk about that, next week. But my goodness, like just the strong and regal and handsome and driven and self-assured, but willing to learn and grow, and he's the king, but willing to hear what other people had to say. Like all of it, it's just my goodness, that guy. Like I'm glad that they're gonna. I think it makes sense, and it follows some of the storylines in the comics. That the rumors are that Shuri is going to take on the mantle of Black Panther, and that's cool and great. But I hope nobody else tries to play T'Challa.
Yeah. And I think that from what I've read and from what I've seen, like the Marvel Universe has no interest in doing that because of just honoring that memory. and the work that he did, and he was brilliant, and he just nailed it. And he's such a good actor, you know. He really was. He just really was, and he will be T'Challa, Black Panther forever.
Yeah.
Right, forever, no questions asked.
Right.
Yeah, that's a good one. That's a good one. I'm gonna go to back to the voice actors that,
Okay.
and we talked about this one before we started as well. Mark Hamill's voicing of the Joker. This is the second time we brought up the Joker, but Mark Hamill's voicing of the Joker, you know, for years I didn't know it was Mark Hamill.
Right. Yeah.
And no idea.
Yeah.
No idea. And when you think about that in the context of everybody knows his voice in geek culture because he played Luke Skywalker, right? And we've all seen those movies 100 times over. We've seen him in interviews 100 times over. By the way, him and Mark Hamill in interviews, like if Mark Hamill ever sees this, man, you're a great dude. Like what an just phenomenal human being.
Also, if you're not following Hamill on Twitter, do so now.
Yeah, right.
Pause this podcast, go follow him on the socials, and come back and listen to us.
Yeah, please do, because his socials are great.
Yeah.
But he does just an amazing job. Like to not know, to know that man's voice so well, right, from childhood and into adulthood, and to watch that portrayal of the Joker and not know it's him. Well done, sir.
Right.
Right? Just well done. Like you nailed it. Yeah. Should we because we'll start wrapping up. Should we go into the swing and the miss category?
I got one more nailed it that I want to bring up, and I'm gonna go to the Marvel Netflix universe. And I know from our conversations, there's one from there that you have.
Yeah, I'll
I agree with you, but I'll let you have that one. I'm gonna say, I really thought Mike Coulter as Luke Cage hit that one right on the head. That he's got the look for Luke Cage. That he's got that combination of obviously powerful and large, powerful. See what I did there? And but yet compassionate, and does a great job of embodying that whole thing of like he's so annoyed by all the fighting and like all the unnecessary, like just stop shooting at me, just stop.
Right, the shirt gets ruined and he's bummed out by the shirt getting shot up.
Right, yeah, just stop. But then when he needs to, he's like, okay, I will put an end to the fight now. I couldn't convince you to just stop, so I will stop you.
Yeah.
And you and I have talked about this a lot, but I thought the Marvel Netflix shows were so good. Especially Luke Cage and Punisher, and the one I know you're going to talk about.
Actually, so it's funny. So I'm going to talk about two, and I'm going to go in different directions with it than you might think. Nailed it from the onset, John Bernthal as the Punisher.
Yeah.
The Punisher has had so many swings and misses.
Yeah.
From Dolph Lundgren to, like so many where we had 3 Punisher movies, and in all 3 Punisher movies, you went, that's not him. Yeah. Like, that's terrible. Like, it's just there's a motivation missing. There's something missing. John Bernthal, wow. What can be said? Like, there's certain characters that you want to see come back from very like selfish reasons because you think there's more to that story to be told. I never in a million years thought the Punisher would be one of those because we had 3 horrible movies.
Yeah.
But his turn as the Punisher, showing up in Daredevil and then getting his own show. And we talked about the Punisher as a comic book character before, and your thing on it, if I remember right, is like just the pure violence and kind of lack of depth. John Bernthal brought a depth and emotion to a character and he didn't do it without being while being untrue to the roots of the character, he just showed us a level to like the grief, the pain that fuels that anger, right?
Yeah.
So good.
Yeah, that's a great example. And you're right. So my take on that was I've never cared about the Punisher character. I just never cared. I know he exists. I know he's around. I've never sought it out. I've never thought it was all that interesting or cared. John Bernthal's performance made me care about the character.
Yeah. Yeah. I think he did that.
I don't know how to give a bigger compliment than that. He embodied that character, and as you say, gave it such depth, gave him such pathos and struggle, and like just embodied that internal chaos that's happening for him, embodied the grief and the pain and the determination to go on like in a way that I was not expecting, and made me want to watch every moment of it.
Yeah, absolutely, hands down. And there were moments where you saw the comic book version of him very clearly come out, like in the prison scene where he kills everyone.
Yeah.
Without remorse, and you see the rage on his face. Gosh, it's just so good. And so the next one is going to be a little bit different because I actually think this person grew in to embodying this character perfectly. And in the first like couple episodes, I was like, we'll see where this goes, right? Because the show itself was good and really well done, but I wasn't sold on the individual. And then I became 100% sold on the individual, and I don't think anybody else should ever play him. That's Charlie Cox's Daredevil.
Yeah, that's the one I was expecting from him. Like we talk about that a lot. I think he's just so good. But yeah, take it away. What do you got?
So for me, it's just, Daredevil was another one of my favorites as a kid. I read a lot of the comic books. I really liked him. And the thing about it was the Matt Murdock personality had some quip and humor and lightness to him. And then, Daredevil was very obviously violent. The Daredevil movie with Ben Affleck, right? There were a couple good scenes in there, that were okay, but by and large, and someday we'll have to talk about Batfleck.
And it did give us the Evanescence song that's still with us to this day.
Yeah, I don't know why, but it is. But the first couple episodes, I feel like, and maybe it was just how they were writing his character and the dialogue and everything else, you didn't see some of that come out, right? But as the show went on and he settled into the role, and man, like the idea of Charlie Cox as a outside person like just disappeared, and you were like, oh, that's Matt Murdock. Oh, now he's Daredevil. And the duality of that character, right? Because there is a very strong, we just talked about Luke Cage. Luke Cage is Luke Cage.
Yeah.
There is no real duality to Luke Cage. He's just like
he doesn't even have a superhero name. It's just
he doesn't even have a superhero name. The Punisher, there's not really duality to the Punisher. But right. Daredevil has a very strong duality. He's like Batman in that sense, right? Yeah. Bruce Wayne is the billionaire playboy, and then Batman is the Dark Knight. Daredevil.
So that's the. I know it's a good time.
Right.
Yeah.
And Daredevil is kind of the same. Like Matt Murdock is this lawyer who likes to fight for the underprivileged, but he's also kind of a humorous whatever.
Daredevil who just likes to fight.
Yeah, and Daredevil who's like, I just want to fight. Right, I'm going after everybody, and I'm gonna right every wrong. And he has those lines that he doesn't cross with like killing people and whatnot, but he's not afraid to break a couple bones.
Right.
And Charlie Cox just nailed it, and I'm really excited. I have to say, I'm really excited to see him on the big screen in the new Spider-Man movie. If all those rumors are true,
if that's really true, I will be super excited. I agree with you. Cox, to me, embodies the tortured soul of that duality that you're talking about, and really wrestles with his idea of God and who God is and who he's supposed to be in a world where where this God that he believes in is. Like, who's essentially, I think, and obviously as a pastor, I might be colored here on this, might be biased, but I think he's wrestling with the question, who is God calling me to be in this world? Because I have both these, the duality that you're talking about.
Right.
It's not exactly, he's not mild mannered Clark Kent, but he's
God-fearing. I grew up in an orphanage with nuns and fathers taking care of me, right? And has that belief in God, like you're talking about. And he wrestles with it. Like, is this what I'm supposed to be doing? Like, and
that's exactly the right thing. He wrestles with God and with himself and his role in the world, I think. And I don't want to see anybody else play Matt Murdock.
No, nope. I think the three people we just talked about, I would love to see translate into the big screen. And I think they deserve more time in those characters because I think they all did a great job. Hopefully Charlie Cox, is actually going to get, excuse me, is actually going to get that time if all the rumors are true. Yeah. I'd love to see Bernthal get that, and as well. So before we wrap up, let's go into our swings and a miss.
Okay.
So as you can tell by my background, I've been thinking about Star Wars a lot lately.
Yeah.
It was my first introduction into geek culture. I remember watching the original Star Wars and when it came out in the movie theater. By the way, they smoked in movie theaters back then. I remember that vividly as a child as well. So I was, having grown up in the original Star Wars trilogy, you can imagine how excited I was for the next Star Wars trilogy to tell us that first part of the story. And there were some great performances in there. Let's give it up for Ewan McGregor. I can't wait to see the Obi-Wan show that comes to Disney Plus.
Yeah.
I'm sure the person I'm about to talk about is a very nice person, and I have nothing against them as a human being. Hayden Christensen, though, as Anakin was tough for me. Like, I go back and watch it, and I'm going to be real honest, and this is probably extremely superficial on my end, but everybody else seemed to grow in the series and kind of mature and evolve and change. And I just felt like Hayden Christensen didn't do that with his character. I felt like it was just kind of flat. If you ever watch the Clone Wars cartoons, they do a really good job of like fleshing out Anakin Skywalker and bringing that character to life, and just a really nice job with that. And I feel like, and maybe it was the writing, right? But I don't think I think we would have had a more dynamic and interesting and tortured Anakin if somebody else had played him.
Yeah.
My 2 cents.
Yeah, I can't argue with any of that. I was kind of thinking, I might say, I might go with a swing and miss. I just am not enamored with Ezra Miller as Flash. I know we're supposedly gonna get a movie with it, and I'm sure I'll go watch it, but I don't know. I don't know what, I can't put my finger on it, but and again, maybe it's because the movies haven't been fabulous, but I'm fine with him as like the sort of jokey, like uncertain comic relief character, I guess. Although I don't really think that's maybe that's Flash has been somewhat, but I don't know. Maybe it's the physicality. And it's probably completely unfair, but he doesn't scream Flash to me.
I agree with you. But again, like, I think growing up in the era that like we grew up in, I probably read more DC originally, right? Okay. So like Green Lantern, Flash, Superman, and it probably had something to do with the Super Friends cartoon being on TV during that time frame, right? So you were exposed to it, and you're like, oh, that's what I want to read.
Yeah.
And the Flash was always super cool because he moved so fast, and who he is in Barry Allen in the comic books is he's a little humorous when he's playing the Flash, but there's a level of intelligence that exists behind it, right? It's witty. Ezra Miller's portrayal feels very childlike and adolescent to me, and he's not like, that's not Barry Allen.
And not just childlike, but childish.
Very childish. Like he's got a sense of wonder about him that I think is interesting. But I guess one of the, and I'll touch on this, and maybe this will help a little bit with this. The Justice League movie, the biggest swing and miss for me in that movie was everybody was brought in out of sequence. We've got a super young, underdeveloped Flash who had not gone to school yet and wasn't working with the police department or anything like that. And that's not where we got the Flash in the comic books. We had the Dark Knight Returns version of Batman.
Right, so super old and had been at it for, grizzled veteran who was disgruntled and kind of struggling to care anymore.
We got a Superman that seemed like he was fairly new on the scene. And we got a Wonder Woman who'd been around for ages, right? But was like not really exposed to the world yet. And then we had an Aquaman that, was I maybe too new into that as well. So there was this weird, bizarre mix, and it was hard to like get into the characters in the way that you wanted to. And I think it really did. And who knows, like you said, we're supposed to get a Flash movie, and maybe we'll see something different. But I feel like we got an out of sequence Flash that we hadn't really ever seen before anywhere. And and it just like, it was a swing and a miss. So I agree with you on that one. Who's the kid that plays the Flash in the CW TV show?
I don't know his name. I haven't really watched a lot of it. Gustin?
I don't know. I got to be honest, I've only ever watched a couple episodes. I have a hard time going back and binge watching any of those.
Agreed.
But I will say, like, what I've seen of him, he's a really nice job.
I think that's right. He for sure he does a better job of portraying the intelligence version and the...
Very much so.
Is a competent person in the world, as opposed to the Ezra Miller, like,
I'm hiding out in a warehouse. Like, that's my secret place. And
I don't know.
It was weird to me. It was weird. So
I know we're going long here. I got just two quick ones. Just to shout out just names, like, back to the voice actor things. How about Shamik Moore as Miles Morales in Spider-Verse? Like,
so good. So good. That's a good one. Excited for the second one of those.
Oh my gosh, so much. I've never known how to pronounce her name. Is it? I always want to say Kelly Kuko, but I don't know. Is it Kuko? I don't know. I don't know how you say it. But she was on the. I didn't watch the show. She was on the not How I Met Your Mother. The other one.
You're talking about Maria Hill?
Genius one. No. So she voices Harley Quinn in the HBO Max animated Harley Quinn show. That's so good.
So good.
Right?
That is so good.
What's the TV show? I know. Here's where I'm gonna lose all my geek cred. Like, what's the TV show that she was in with Bazinga and blah blah blah?
Oh, I don't remember.
I've never watched that TV show.
I don't know. I don't know.
Okay.
I couldn't tell you. I'm gonna lose all my cred too.
I've not watched that show. I know of it, but was Sheldon and something like?
Oh yeah, I can't think of the name, and everybody loves it, and it's like they're, it's The Big Bang.
There you go.
Yeah, yeah, The Big Bang.
Big Bang Theory. Is that
Yeah,
what it's
Big
called?
Bang Theory. Yeah, that's
Yeah.
what it was. I've never really. I think I've watched like 2 episodes of that
Yeah,
in my
never really
entire
seen it.
time, and I just like.
Yeah. Anyway, I think
It's-
she does a really good job as Harley Quinn in that animated show.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree with you there. I would agree with you. And leaving off on a positive, because we can leave off on a. We should always end on a positive. I'd say, and I'm going to go way, way back again into the Star Wars kind of universe,
Okay.
right out of the gate. And he made this character. So I don't know if it's fair to say this, but even if you go back and watch A New Hope, he was him. And I know they made a movie outside of that about this character, and I felt like it was all right. But Harrison Ford is Han Solo forever and ever in my mind. Like he was great. Like he was great. Like Mark Hamill, like all of them did a phenomenal job. And like, again, shout out to Mark Hamill. It will always be like Luke Skywalker. And although I think that, and he would agree, Sebastian Shaw has the potential, should they ever make a Luke Skywalker series, Sebastian Shaw could come in, and he has a very similar look.
Yeah.
But they tried to make a solo movie about a young Han Solo.
Yeah.
And I felt like it was a fun movie. I enjoyed it, but it didn't feel like Han Solo.
Like Han Solo. Yeah, that's right.
No.
That's right. Yeah. That's fair. Han Solo was always my favorite character in the original ones when I was a kid. Even though I was probably much more like Luke, young at the time, and certainly a dork I was, and not really sure about what was going on. I had none of that cocky assurance that Harrison Ford gave Han Solo, and that's probably why I liked it, because it embodied something that I couldn't be.
Yeah, I would agree with you. I would actually like to see, and I know they're making all these like shows. We got The Mandalorian, that was really cool. We're gonna get the Book of Boba Fett. I'm excited for that one. Super excited for that one. We're gonna get the Obi-Wan show. I really would like them to give us a Luke Skywalker show post Return of the Jedi, because there's a lot of mythos in there, and there's we never really saw how strong and how powerful Luke became. Mm-hmm. And I was kind of bummed about that in the last trio of movies, that again, we didn't really get to see like the full breadth of his power and everything that he went through. But still, Mark Hamill, we got to see Mark Hamill again.
Right.
And
let me just interject to say that the last act of Luke Skywalker, if you will, was a pretty dang impressive display of power.
Yeah, well, and we got to see, I will say, and I think and I'd also like to see a Darth Vader standalone series.
Oh my gosh.
Because for very similar reasons. At the end of Rogue One, we finally saw how terrifying Darth Vader really is. Yeah. And at the end of Mandalorian, we saw like that power from Luke. And I'm like, just show me, like, my little geek heart would love this so much. Right. So anyway, it's like, that's way divergent from our all
right, here's a question. This is gonna have to be, we're gonna have to do a sequel at some point to this episode, and I want us to tackle that. Here's the question for you: is have we ever had a perfectly cast Batman?
Yeah, I think that's its own episode.
This is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that's its own episode. There have been so many that have played Batman. Right. So yeah, let's save that one for a later date. We'll put that one in our hat, and I think we're good to wrap this one up.
All right, everybody. If anybody's still with us, like 70 minutes later,
I know.
Thank you. You're amazing. We just having fun. If I hope you are too. We know we're not solving world problems here, but everybody needs a little diversion and something that can bring them a little joy, and that's our hope here. I think at Coffee and Capes, that you'll enjoy some coffee if that's your thing, and enjoy some geek culture if that's your thing, and if it's not, maybe you'll learn to like it a little more.
Yeah, and thanks for tuning in, all 6 people who probably have listened to this. And if you are listening to this for the first time, thanks, and feel free to put like requests for future episodes, like future discussions that you would like to see in any comments. If you do put in comments, as always, remember this is an inclusive and happy place, and you can disagree with us, and please put in, like, if you do disagree with us on something, feel free. Yeah. We're happy to have a debate. Just as always, be nice about it.
Yeah.
Right.
And John, where can people find us?
They can find us on Spotify, Coffee in. So it's Coffee _N Capes. So Coffee and Capes will be coming to iTunes soon, and then also our YouTube channel. So you can watch us if you want. I mean, there's really nothing that's involved there.
Just 2 handsome guys talking about.
That's a stretch, but hey, well, we can grow into those characters.
Right. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. Bye, John.
Bye.